Good evening, everybody. A number of breaking news stories tonight. We're just moments away from what will be a major presidential address on tax cuts. President Trump will be addressing the Heritage Foundation to make his case for middle-class tax cuts and reductions in corporate rates as well. We'll bring you the president's remarks in their entirety just as soon as he takes the stage. Also tonight, a big victory in the war against radical Islamist terrorism and the Islamic State. Celebration in the streets of Raqqa as U.S.-backed forces have liberated the Islamic capital in Syria. We'll discuss what that means for the now shattered caliphate. And the NFL and its commissioner, Roger Goodell, today dashing any hopes that the league would take decisive action of any kind against the protests against our flag, our anthem, and our country. NFL players and owners meeting today to discuss the shameful insults, but aside from a, quote, productive conversation, nothing has changed as a result of that meeting. Goodell, in fact, telling reporters he didn't ask owners or players for a commitment to stand for the national anthem.
We did not ask for that, so. No, we spent today talking about the issues that our players have been trying to bring attention to about issues in our communities to make our communities better.
In fact, the only thing the NFL has done in the past 24 hours is endorse a bill on criminal justice reform. That's right, the NFL is endorsing legislation on criminal justice reform. We'll have a full report on the controversy that is dragging down ratings, merchandise sales, seat sales, you name it, dragging a league through the mud, inspired by a commissioner and a handful of players, relatively speaking, who want to make a political statement. Our top story tonight, President Trump about to deliver a major policy speech on tax reform at the Heritage Foundation's annual President's Club meeting. The president will address Congress' once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver sweeping pro-growth tax reform for the American people. The event being held at the Marriott Marquis in Washington, D.C. Heritage telling us there are approximately 1,000 people in the room. Will be going to the president as soon as he takes the stage. And the Trump tax plan reducing 7 individual tax brackets to just 4, possibly, and rates coming down to 0, 12%, 25%, and 35% if the 4th is enacted. It also seeks to slash corporate tax rates from almost 40% to 20% and intends to repatriate some $3 trillion in offshore corporate profits that remain in accounts overseas instead of being invested by corporate America in this country. But concerns now growing over whether Mr. Trump's tax cut plan will go the way of Obamacare repeal in the Senate. Before Congress passes tax cuts, it must pass a budget, and that is certainly not assured with Mitch McConnell leading the way. The Senate can only afford losing 2 votes on the budget. Senator Rand Paul already affirmed no. Susan Collins, Bob Corker voicing their reservations and likely no votes. John McCain had been a holdout, but he announced this evening that he would back at least the budget. Our first guest tonight is a highly respected military and intelligence analyst, the former strategist, Deputy Assistant to President Trump, now Chief Strategist for the Make America Great Again Coalition. We're joined now by Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Great to have you with us. And the president is he's embarked on something of a high wire act here with tax reform, Congress set to move on the budget. These are difficult times, no matter how repaired the relationship between Mitch McConnell and the president appears to be.
Absolutely, Lou. The GOP, the leadership on the Hill, really fumbled the ball when it came to Obamacare. So this is, the next and last test really on the large-scale legislative actions that they have to take to support the president's agenda. It was a very interesting press conference yesterday. Not a very confident Mitch McConnell. The president was doing his best to walk the tightrope, understanding that he is not a swamp creature. He was only, I say, accidentally the GOP candidate because he's such a rank outsider. So now Mitch McConnell has to step up to the plate. Paul Ryan has to step up to the plate and look at the last 8 months and say, we have not done enough. Now's the time to support the president and his agenda, and today it's tax reform.
I want to take up as well tax reform. We'll be listening to the president. He's scheduled to take the stage in about 10 minutes. But I want to turn to the change of attitude in 48 hours from the president's statement that he was not and could not recertify the Iranian nuclear deal to the Sunday talk shows where suddenly the Secretary of State and the UN ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, are both talking as if the president has said we're desperately trying to say in here, and this is just a simple hiatus from a deal being certified. It was an extraordinary change of tone and rhetoric, and frankly, slightly disrespectful, I thought, to the president and his remarks on Friday.
Lou, the president, this is one of the issues I've spoken with the president most often. I was in the room the last time we recertified. I predicted he would not recertify, which is exactly what he did. Sometimes there's the good cop, bad cop show that has to be done. But at the end of the day, I'm not worried. Nikki Haley has proven herself in the last 8 months, one of the toughest UN ambassadors the United States has ever had. Rex Tillerson, I'm going to say no comment right now. But the president, his gut instincts on the JCPOA being a disaster for U.S. security, for Israel's security, are absolutely right. And remember what he said when he said, I'm not going to recertify. He said, and I may pull us out of this altogether. That's what I recommended. I wrote an op-ed about it. Sooner or later, this deal has to be killed in the interests of national security.
And let's turn to the travel ban. The same district court judge in Hawaii rears his ugly legal head again and blocks a president carrying out his duties to protect the nation.
This is a joke. This is a farce, Lou. The constitutional powers of the president, the laws have been clear since the 1950s, reiterated in landmark cases in the 1980s. There's one individual who gets to decide who comes into this country and by what standards based upon national security. We vet those individuals, and it's not a judge in Hawaii. It's not the 9th District Circus in San Francisco. It is the president of the United States, and it's clear that the Supreme Court shares that opinion, and the immigration moratorium will stand.
And one other development today that I want to take up with you quickly, if I may, and that is...
It's a big news day.
It is an extraordinary news day. But we're going to get it all covered here tonight, I guarantee you. Well, most of it at least. But the FBI, and letting us know finally that there was an investigation years in advance of the Hillary Clinton, if you will, explosion, in terms of the FBI investigating Russian interference in our elections, bribery of officials, with direct links to money going into the Clinton Foundation for the purpose of advancing Vladimir Putin's interest in, quote, the United States.
Lou, this is the biggest story of the day. I predict the consequences of this story will be heard for years and years. We have to doff our cap to Sarah Carter, who's breaking this story, an amazing investigative journalist in the old school. She's going to be giving details on your colleague Sean Hannity's show later tonight. This is pay for play. This is all it is. This is millions of dollars coming from a foreign government.
But what's different? What's different? We've been reporting this story from the very beginning.
What's different?
What's different here is that we actually have FBI sources that are releasing this material. We thought it was only the deep state and the left who were suffocating the truth. It turns out that there are some very strong patriots who have the courage to move forward and point out that there's a great issue when it comes to the Clinton Foundation, the pay-for-play scandal that crossed all sorts of countries and in most of the years of the Obama administration. But the difference here, it seems to me, Sebastian, is there is actually a basis here to reopen Uranium One and the investigation of that deal in its entirety.
There's a basis here based upon FBI sources. I've worked with thousands of agents, intelligence analysts. There are great people in the FBI. We had James Comey almost single-handedly destroy the reputation of this bureau, but there are some good people left, and one of those people is going on record with evidence of pay-for-play, of corruption occurring, and people will have to go to prison because this is the U.S. government's decision-making system being perverted by filthy lucre. And Sarah Carter's going to give us the evidence tonight, and it's going to be a humdinger.
All right. Sebastian Gorka, great to have you here. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lou.
We're awaiting the president's speech to the Heritage Foundation. We're coming right back. As Sebastian Gorka just said, quite a news day. Much more straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back. President Trump says he may have the votes to dismantle Obamacare.
Obamacare is a disaster. It's virtually dead. We are very close. We feel we have the votes.
We take up the president's battle to pass health care reform, tax cuts, and much more with Congresswoman Mimi Walters. And a huge victory in the fight against the Islamic State. U.S.-backed forces have liberated the Islamic State capital of Raqqa in Syria. We'll have the full report and much more here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Firefighters in Northern California continue to battle those wildfires and now new wildfires in the Santa Cruz Mountains as well. More residents being forced to flee their homes. Roughly, just about 250,000 acres have gone up in flames. Some 7,000 homes and businesses have already been destroyed in those wildfires that have absolutely ravaged the state's wine country. One lawmaker in the state assessing the damage right now at nearly $3 billion. Joining us now, Congresswoman Mimi Walters of California. She's a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and it's a delight to have you with us, Congresswoman. These wildfires are the deadliest in California history. We are seeing some positive efforts, but it's a disaster area. Give us your sense of how extensive the damage and what role the federal government can play for California.
Yeah. It is a tragedy. It's probably been the worst or one of the worst wildfires in the history of the state of California. And of course, we're talking about the Northern California wildfires. I'm in Southern California. We've had fires here as well. But Northern California has been much worse. We've seen over 40 people have died. They still have 88 people missing. As you mentioned, thousands of homes have been destroyed. And in Congress, we were able to pass a $576 million package to send some resources to California to help with the efforts. And
turning to Congress and all that you have before you, this is going to be a real test of the leadership of both the Speaker and the Majority Leader to move forward the President's agenda. And first and foremost, of course, is the budget. What do you expect will happen in the vote?
Well, in the House, we did pass the budget last week, and now we're waiting for the Senate to pass their budget, which they anticipate doing this week. Once we have both houses pass the budget, we will then move forward with the language on tax reform. And tax reform, as you know, is a goal of not only the president, but of Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell to make sure we get tax reform and relief for middle-class Americans, and we want to get it done by the end of the year.
Right now, we have basically no understanding from Ways and Means as to details about what the tax cuts will look like. Can you frame that for us as you understand it? And do you have a good sense of what's proceeding? Because it's not regular order, and we're not seeing committee hearings, and it's awfully tough, even with a strong chairman and a good man like Kevin Brady running things, we're not getting a lot of information here.
We will get more information. I think the goal was to get a framework that both the president, the House, and the Senate could agree on. And when I talk about a framework, I talk about, so what are our goals? Our goals are to make sure, number one, we give middle-class Americans a break so they have more money in their pocket so they can plan for their future. We want to make the tax code simple so that you don't have to hire somebody and pay a lot of money and that you can actually do taxes yourself. We want to make sure we give relief to businesses. We want to make sure that businesses can invest in America, that they can create more jobs and we can get the economy going. That's the framework and the goal that we have all agreed on. And now, once the budget gets done, we're going to be able to fill in the details.
Well, the details are huge, and amongst the biggest, of course, is repatriation of those corporate profits. Some put the estimate at $3 trillion, some higher. But how in the world do you have any sense this plan will incentivize corporate America to invest in this economy and invest in the creation of American jobs?
We have one of the highest tax rates for corporations in industrialized nation. And the idea is that we give corporations the opportunity by lowering the tax rate so that they can bring money back into our country, and they will want to do it. We need to give them an incentive to do it so that they will invest in America. They
what
will
is that
create
incentive,
more jobs.
though, Congresswoman? That's what I don't quite get.
We're talking right now, the president is talking about a corporate tax rate of 20%, small businesses 25%. He's talking about for individuals, you know, we're going to take our 7 tax structures, take them from 7 down to 3.
I understand the architecture. I'm just curious about the void that seems to exist around how will corporate America be incentivized to actually invest that money if it is repatriated?
Well, you bring it, they'll be incentivized by giving them a low rate so that it makes it feasible and makes it them wanting to bring their money back into America so that they can create more jobs.
Congresswoman, thank you very much. Good to talk with you. Come back soon.
Thank you.
Mimi
Thanks.
Walters. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. The question is, do you believe the NFL should focus on the game itself and entertainment of its fans rather than political issues? We'd like to hear from you on this. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'll share the results with Roger Goodell as soon as we tally them. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street today, stocks closing at record highs. The Dow up 40 points, the S&P up 2, both closing at all-time highs. The Nasdaq fell a fraction. Volume on the big board, 2.9 billion shares. The Dow crossing 23,000 for the first time ever, but unfortunately it crossed it twice, going back below 23,000, just under the historic level. Shares of United Healthcare soaring 5%, reporting better than expected earnings. The insurer previously pulled out of the Obama exchanges. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, we await President Trump's speech to the Heritage Foundation. We'll have special coverage of his remarks and a shocking report exposing collusion among Russia, the Obama administration, and yes, the Clintons. We'll take it up with Tony Shaffer here next. Stay with us. There the president is. He has just arrived at the Heritage Foundation dinner tonight in Washington, D.C. The president expected to take up tax reform, tax cuts, and the economy. Here is the President of the United States.
And because of Ed, I hear they had to make this room a lot larger quickly. So that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. And really, Ed's dedication and leadership and devotion to our country has really been spectacular. We appreciate it very much. I'd like to begin by providing a quick update on our economy I don't think too many people in this room will be upset, but the stock market hit today 23,000. That's an all-time record high, so congratulations to everybody in our country. It's an incredible honor to be here tonight to celebrate this really wonderful foundation. Just a few months from now, you will mark the 45th anniversary of this esteemed institution. For nearly a half a century, you have been titans in the fight to defend, promote, and preserve our great American heritage. Few people have worked harder to protect this heritage than Ed Meese, a fearless defender of our Constitution. Where is Ed? Where is Ed? Thank you, Ed. And Mrs. Meese, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, that's a very popular couple, I must say. I also want to express my deep appreciation to the great Steve Moore, who is with us tonight. Steve, where is Steve? Steve has been fantastic. We've been working long and hard together. We're thrilled to be joined by many distinguished guests, including Senator Joni Ernst and Congressman Ron DeSantis. Please sit up. Where's Ron? Ron DeSantis. Thank you, Ron, for everything. And thank you, Joni. Thank you, Joni. Thanks, Ron. Finally, I want to express our gratitude to Kay James, Bill Walton, and the dedicated scholars and staff at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great job. Everyone here tonight understands a core truth, that for America to have confidence in our future, we must have pride in our history. As Americans, we have inherited a special legacy of freedom, culture, laws, traditions, and values. Your organization is named the Heritage Foundation because you understand that our glorious heritage is the foundation of everything we hope to achieve. You understand that human progress must be built upon a firm foundation of timeless truths. These truths are immortalized in our founding documents. And the most important truth our founders understood was this: freedom is not a gift from government. Freedom is a gift from God. And that is why we're here tonight, to rededicate ourselves to the defense of our God-given rights. We're here to ensure that we defend this legacy from any threat, foreign or domestic, that would seek to weaken our values, diminish our freedoms, or dissolve the bonds that hold us so strongly and firmly together. As our nation has responded in recent weeks to a series of heartbreaking tragedies, from the catastrophic storms to the devastating wildfires to the horrific mass shooting in Las Vegas, we are reminded that no destructive force on earth is stronger than the courage, character, and love of the American people. This is a time of great challenge for the world, but also a time of great opportunity. We can unleash the creative power of our citizens, unlock new frontiers in science and medicine, and usher in prosperity for communities all across our land. But to achieve these great things, we must hold fast to the values that define who we are as a people and as a nation. Everyone here tonight is united by these same enduring beliefs. We believe that the Constitution is the greatest political document in human history, and that judges should interpret the Constitution as written. We believe we should preserve our history, not tear it down. Now they're even trying to destroy statues of Christopher Columbus. What's next? Has to be stopped. It's heritage. We believe that America is a nation of opportunity because we are a nation of laws, and we support the incredible men and women of law enforcement. We believe that our great American flag should be treated with reverence and respect, and that young Americans should be taught to love our country, honor our anthem, and proudly recite the Pledge of Allegiance. We believe that strong nations must have strong borders, and that our most important job is to serve the needs of America and the American people. That includes common sense reforms like cracking down on sanctuary cities, ending catch and release, and very importantly, ending chain migration. The loyal, hardworking citizens of our country deserve a government that shows them the same loyalty in return. Finally, we believe that the basis for international security and peace is mutual cooperation among independent and sovereign nations. This is the message I delivered in my address to the United Nations. I told the leaders in that hall that just like I expect, and we all understand this, and they finally understand it because there was a great misunderstanding, that just like I expect them to put the needs of their countries first, I will always put the needs of our country first. That is why we are withdrawing from one-sided international deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Paris Climate Accord. Devastating to our country if we would have gone into those deals. My administration is working to strengthen old alliances and form new friendships based on shared interests, shared goals, and shared values. As a demonstration of America's will, we have passed historic increases in defense spending. You saw that just last week. Because, as Ronald Reagan said, we believe in peace through strength. We've made historic strides in the fight against ISIS, dealing them one brutal defeat after another. We are confronting dangerous regimes from North Korea to Iran. Last week, I announced our strategy to ensure the Iranian dictatorship never acquires a nuclear weapon. And we have imposed tough terrorism sanctions on Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I also canceled the last administration's one-sided deal with the communist Cuban regime, and we will not lift sanctions until political and religious freedoms are restored for the Cuban people. At the same time, we are confronting the socialist oppression of the Maduro regime. The problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented. We stand in solidarity with the people of Venezuela in their struggle for freedom. Here in America, we are strengthening our own freedom by appointing judges to the bench who will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. With your help, we have not only nominated, but confirmed the new Supreme Court Justice who is doing a spectacular job, Neil Gorsuch. We have taken action to repeal the EPA's so-called Clean Power Plan, and we have ended, finally, the war on clean, beautiful coal. People going back to work. They're going back to work. Over the last 9 months, we have removed job-killing regulations at a record pace. In fact, in 9 months, we have done more, they say, than any president in history. And we're 9 months, and there's more to come. We have statutory guidelines. We have to go by a period of time, but there's much more to come. And I believe in regulation, but it has to be limited to what we need. We want clean water. We want clean air. It has to be fair. We also want, by the way, jobs. And our regulatory reductions are going to put more Americans back to work and more lobbyists out of work. I don't know, there could be some lobbyists in this room, sorry. Which is why regulatory reform is a crucial part of our drive to drain the swamp. On the economic front, we're upholding the legacy of America's greatest presidents, from Washington to Jackson to Lincoln, by defending American industry and defending our American workers. We want more products stamped with those beautiful words and letters, made in the USA. To restore opportunity and freedom, we must continue our campaign to repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare. And I've been hearing that phrase for 7 years. 7 years I've been hearing it. So have you. And I got here and I thought, maybe when I sit down at that desk the first day, January 20th, I'll have something to sign. Not as easy as we thought, but we're going to get it done. You watch. And I'm pleased that Democrats have finally responded to my call for them to take responsibility for their Obamacare disaster and work with Republicans to provide much-needed relief to the American people. While I commend the bipartisan work done by Senators Alexander and Murray, and I do commend it, I continue to believe Congress must find a solution to the Obamacare mess instead of providing bailouts to insurance companies. After many, many years of government obstructing job creation, you have now an administration that promotes job creation and celebrates the dignity of work. Unemployment is, and this is something so important, unemployment is almost at a 17-year low. GDP growth reached more than 3.2% last quarter, and people said it would take years to get there. Manufacturing confidence is at record levels, but our country and our economy cannot take off like they should and like it should unless we transform America's outdated, complex, and extremely burdensome tax code. The Great Heritage Foundation has been at the center of several incredible tax cuts in American history. Working closely with the Heritage Foundation, Ronald Reagan cut taxes to unleash the economic miracle of the 1980s. You understand that lower taxes mean bigger paychecks, more jobs, and stronger growth. At the heart of our plan is a tax cut for everyday working Americans. The first $12,000 for a single individual and the first $24,000 for a married couple will be tax-free. We are nearly doubling the zero bracket, and we substantially increase the child tax credit for working families, which so many people want, including my daughter, Ivanka. To save Americans precious time and money, we are also simplifying the tax code. Under our framework, the vast majority of families will be able to file their taxes on a single sheet of paper. In addition to simplification, the other pillar of our tax plan is reducing our crushing business tax so that we can restore America's competitive edge. Today, our business tax rate is 60% higher than our average economic competitor. This is a giant self-inflicted economic wound. That is why we will cut the corporate tax rate from 35% all the way down to not more than 20%, way below our average competition out there in this very competitive world. And for small businesses that file taxes as sole proprietors, S corporations or partnerships, we will cap the top tax rate at a maximum of 25%. It's a tremendous reduction from what it is, and I will tell you, it's the biggest reduction in taxes in the history of this country. For the more than 30 million American small businesses in America, our plan cuts their top marginal rate by about 40%. This will be the lowest top marginal rate and income tax rate for small and medium-sized businesses in more than 80 years. To maximize job creation for at least the next 5 years, we will allow our companies and our manufacturers to expense the full cost of new equipment in the year they buy it. 1 year, it's written off. Makes me want to go immediately back into business. And yes, we are ending the horrible and very unfair estate tax, also known as the death tax. Finally, we are going to bring back trillions of dollars currently parked overseas. You look at the money that can't come back into our country. I've been saying for years it's $2.5 trillion. Democrats want it back, Republicans want it back, and they have for a long time. They've never been able to make a deal. Lack of leadership. They've never been able to make a deal. We're putting that in our tax plan. We're going to bring, I think it's going to be over $3 trillion. It could be substantially more than that. Because if I'm saying $2.5 trillion, and I've been saying it for many years, we know one thing, it's a lot more now. Nobody really knows the answer. I will tell you, I think it's very substantially over $3 trillion that will be brought back in our plan and put to work in our country, not some other country. Our framework provides a one-time low tax on profits currently sitting offshore so that this money can come back right where it started, come back home to America where it belongs. And believe me, we can use it in this country. We need it so badly for so many things, including infrastructure, which we'll also be doing. We will eliminate the penalty on bringing home, and we have to do that, future earnings. My Council of Economic Advisors estimates that this change, along with a lower business tax rate, would likely give the typical American household around a $4,000 pay raise. And that's money that'll be spent in our economy. Our tax plan will ensure that companies stay in America, grow in America, and hire in America. We will lift our people from welfare to work, from dependence to independence, and from poverty to total, beautiful prosperity. Which is why we need the help of the Heritage Foundation and everyone here tonight to get our tax cuts through the House, through the Senate, and to my desk for signature. So you've got to call up your local senator and say, Senator, don't give him a hard time. Don't give him a hard time. It's going to be hard getting the Democrats because they're obstructionists and they vote in blocks. But if we get the Republicans we need, which is virtually every single one of them, because that's what we need, we will get that largest tax cut in the history of our country. And you will see things happen like have never happened before. We will have employment, we will have jobs, we will have companies moving back into our country, and we certainly won't have companies leaving anymore, that I can tell you. So get your senator, call your congressman. You don't have to call Ron. I think Ron's okay, right, Ron? You're okay? Good. Ron's good. Most of them are good. But there are a couple. I think we're going to get there, Ron. Ron is incredible. So let's give our country the best Christmas present of all. Massive tax relief. And speaking of Christmas, yes? You want to hear it? Speaking, I'm talking about Christmas present. I'll give you a bigger Christmas present. You're going to be saying Merry Christmas again, okay? You're going to say Merry Christmas. You know, you go to the stores, and they have the red walls, and they have the snow, and they even have the sleigh and the whole thing. They don't have Merry Christmas. They don't have Merry Christmas. I want them to say, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year, happy holidays, but I want Merry Christmas. We're going to say it again. It's happening already. You know it. You know it's happening again. This is our chance to truly make a difference. This is our opportunity to unleash a new middle-class miracle. This is our once-in-a-generation opportunity to revitalize our economy, revive our industry, and renew the American dream. The Heritage Foundation can once again help make history by helping to take this incredible idea, this proven idea, this tax cut, making it a reality for millions and millions of patriotic Americans. We know that when the hardworking people of this country huddle in the break room, at the rest stop, or at the end of a long shift, they take pride in knowing that the projects they work and the products they make aren't just building business, they're building families and communities, and most of all, they are building this nation that we all love so much. The fact is, the soul of a country is found in its people, and we owe it to our citizens to provide them with a future of opportunity where they can earn a living with dignity and purpose. We want every parent to be able to care for their children, and we want every child to know a future opportunity, and we want them to have security, and we want them to have hope. We have it in our power to build this future together, and we will build upon the firm foundation of our great American heritage. As long as we remember who we are and what we are fighting for, then we will never, ever fail. And as long as we have pride in our country, confidence in our future, and faith in our God, then our best days are yet to come. Our values will endure, our communities will flourish, our people will prosper, and America, the land we love, will thrive as never, ever before. Thank you to the Heritage Foundation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Heritage Foundation, and thank you to everyone here tonight. Thank you to every American whose hard work and patriotism makes our country run. And again, God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you all. Thank you.
President Donald Trump urging his audience, members of the Heritage Foundation, to help him pass what he calls the largest tax cut in American history. And the president making it clear that that is precisely what is required for, I think he said, big, beautiful prosperity for all Americans. Joining us now to assess the speech and the prospects for the tax cut, the greatest in American history, Washington Times opinion editor Charlie Hurt, senior editor for The Federalist, Molly Hemingway, both Fox Business contributors. Great to have you both with us. Molly, let me turn to you. Your thoughts on the president's speech and the persuasion that he brought to that crowd.
Yeah, it's a great location for a speech. The Heritage Foundation is a group that cares about the founding ideals of the country. They also have cared so much about tax policy that makes sense for the country. So it was a well-timed speech. And one of the things that's interesting here is that the president and his team have really been doing an actual rollout on this plan of having tax reform and tax relief, and they hit different messages at different times. So there's a little bit more consistency to the messaging on this than you might have seen in other issues. And so just the emphasis on how corporate tax relief, how other countries where there are lower corporate tax rates, how that redounds to the benefit of the average American worker, and he made that point tonight. And so I think that's an important thing as part of our discussion when we're deciding what to do with tax reform and tax relief.
And your thoughts, Charlie?
You know, I think one of the things that this president doesn't get nearly as much credit for as he deserves is the quality of the speeches that he's giving. And I think that this is a perfect example of that. You know, obviously he goes through and he ticks off, you know, he goes kind of off script and starts talking about Christmas and the Christopher Columbus statues, which, you know, people love hearing that. They love it when he goes off script. It's a very dangerous thing sometimes, but people love hearing about those things. But when he talks about something like when he says there at the end, when we remember who we are and what we're fighting for, that right there comes close to being what the Trump doctrine is. And if that is the Trump doctrine, and that is what we regain with this president, having completely lost both of those things with the previous president, then this guy stands to be a tremendous success.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And in the importance of the connection to the Heritage Foundation he laid out, because this is a president who truly believes in the founding values of this country. He truly believes in the importance of our heritage. It has made him and his family wealthy. It has given him the opportunity to not only become a billionaire, but become president of the United States. And right away, he is an element that will stand forever in American history just on those two grounds being combined. It was unthinkable before Donald Trump that a billionaire would be leading the nation from the Oval Office. It's extraordinary, don't you think, Molly?
Well, I also think it gets to the point of so much of his campaign, which is talking about the American worker and whether the American worker has been well served by some of the changes to the economy. And this is something that, you know, a lot of even conservatives have kind of forgotten about, how to communicate whether or not the principles that they uphold about the size and scope of government, how does that benefit the American the average American worker, and how do these things, you know, how does everybody benefit from a policy that helps out the American employee? And so I thought that was what was really interesting about this speech, getting to the real hardcore aspect of how individual families will benefit, what the child care tax credit will be like, and again, how corporate tax relief, how other countries where you have lower corporate taxes, how that helps increase employment, and looking at how in previous tax reform and tax relief efforts, it was always pretty good for employees, for workers, and you could build job growth. And I think that's something that people really resonated with them during the campaign, and they're anxious to see some actual policy to back that up.
Yeah, and Charlie, your point about the Trump doctrine, I think of course that you're absolutely correct, but I think there's something else at work here, and that is a president who, in the midst of what has been an economy that's growing at a rate over the last 6 months, certainly through the second quarter, above 3%, which was, we were told, not possible any longer because of structural impediments within the economy. The idea that we have added over $5 trillion since the man was elected to the market cap of the equities markets. As we look at marker after marker after marker in this economy, things are moving in the right direction. But this is a president who's saying he not only needs to restore prosperity to all Americans, but he needs to do so and to assure the future for them. That means to think ahead, and he is playing ahead. He's not waiting for the next recession to say we need to grow. He's not waiting for some signal from the Fed to say that we need to be driving this economy and giving people the opportunity to be productive, to gain wealth, to provide for their families, and to build, not shrink, the American middle class.
Yeah, and I think so much of what we're seeing in the economy right now is based on improved optimism and confidence. Maybe not here in Washington, because here in Washington people are still going absolutely berserk every time the guy opens his mouth. But I think out in normal, real America, I think that there is an increased optimism and confidence, and that's what we're seeing with the economy. And it really should be no surprise, because if you stop and think about the heritage that he talked about, that you talked about, that gave him and his family so much wealth, that all of those things that make America what America is, it's been under attack at all levels of the government, somewhat from Republicans, but completely by Democrats. It's been under attack. We had a president for 8 years who despised all of those institutions, all of the things that this great country stands for, and it came through every time he opened his mouth. And just having that replaced with a guy who sometimes he's hyperbolic, sometimes he says things that aren't technically, totally, completely, factually accurate. But he's saying, he loves America, and it's obvious he loves America, and he wants to preserve these things, and he wants to promote it. And I think that alone does so much to inspire that confidence and optimism that I think is driving the economy right now.
And Molly, there is a collision in all of this too that is taking place. Not only is the president driving through the establishment and the orthodoxy of rigid thought that is so quickly embraced, particularly by the left, and yes, the Business Roundtable and the Chamber of Commerce and their HR departments. He is talking straightforwardly to the American people, and each time he speaks, and tonight was no exception, he's talking to Mr. and Mrs. America. And he really doesn't give much of a damn about what the Washington Post, the New York Times, NBC, CNN, or Fox News is saying. So long as his voice is being heard, he knows that the messaging will be precisely what he wants it to be.
Right. Absolutely true. I actually thought it was kind of interesting, too, though, the difference between some of his rally speeches and a speech to a conservative group, but in D.C. You could kind of tell that the crowd is not quite as enthusiastic as they are at a rally or whatnot. And it is absolutely true that this guy is very good at communicating foundational principles, or, just his gut instinct is something that a lot of politicians who you think would have pretty good gut instincts don't have. And even on these issues, these cultural issues, like what it means to be an American and whether we believe in that or not, a lot of people in D.C. think those things are distractions, attempts to deviate from a better conversation to have. Whereas I think a lot of Americans understand that we are in a place where we absolutely need to have these conversations about whether we believe in who we are as a people, whether we are special, whether we do have very good founding principles, even if we're flawed in our execution, or whether we are irredeemably lost and we need to throw in the towel. And that is the conversation he's driving. It would be great to see more people, whether or not they agree with him, have that conversation.
Yeah, and by the way, this is the president who was elected amongst his 16 opponents in the Republican Party and Hillary Clinton. He was elected because he makes those connections and he speaks forthrightly about his vision of the future. He set the agenda for the entire presidential campaign. People forget that. They don't, and especially the suffocating elites of the good town in which you guys live and work. It's really remarkable to see this man still have that authenticity, that vigor, and the ability to say, you know what, we're going to get it done, and I don't really care much about what you think of the way I'm doing it. He has, in recent weeks, become more constrained, I believe. I believe he has refined his language to just, for the moment at least, get through to some of the elites that he may have to do business with. Mitch McConnell comes to mind. But we're watching a man that is with a fiscal policy that's out of control, $20 trillion in debt. He's selling a tax cut with a monetary policy that still has $4 trillion sitting on the balance sheet of the Fed, saying we've got to drive this economy and we're going to show you economic growth. No president in history has attempted what he is doing to assure that we do have a dynamic economy that is growing jobs and expanding the middle class.
You know, one of my very favorite things about Donald Trump and his campaign was when the campaign would send out so-called talking points, which is a term around here for the things that surrogates and supporters could say in support of him. He always began every one of these talking points with, Mr. Trump is a builder. He builds buildings. And this confounded all the political experts around here. They didn't understand why he started all of his talking points with, Mr. Trump is a builder. He builds buildings. But of course, that's the secret to who the guy is. He is a doer. He is somebody who understands that America is a place where things are created. People create things. They do build these things. They do own these things. They do start these things. And it's that sort of appreciation that I don't think he'll ever forget it. And I think it's the secret to his success. And I think that this would blow anybody's mind around here. I think it's the way he gets reelected.
Okay, but while tax reform is a very compelling message, and they've done a good job of explaining their case for that, it is also true that we have a government that spends like drunken sailors, and that this is an actual crisis. It's a national security crisis to have the levels of debt we have, and it would be good if we were focused not just on economic growth and tax relief and tax reform, but also entitlement reform and other things that are just really causing problems if we have a financial crisis.
If we have a financial crisis, and I know that there is a view in Washington in particular that entitlements need to be constrained, I personally believe that the president was right on the campaign trail when he said, not touching Social Security, we're not going to touch Medicaid and Medicare. We're going to drive an economy forward, because that goes a long way, I think. Molly, Charlie, I'd like to hear from you both on this. I think that goes a long way to restoring what is America.
Economic
the
growth
hell
is
with pulling in your horns. Let's go get them. And
economic growth is key, but also key is restraining your spending. I mean, it's just like if you're in a family financial situation, you need to increase your income, but you also need to get a handle on your expenses. It was politically smart, but true bravery from our political class in D.C. would tackle all the areas where we need improvement.
Yeah, and if you can find true bravery and where it resides on Capitol Hill, let me know, because all I've seen are people run from the prospect of building that future that the president has been so bold to declare for the American people. Charlie, Molly, we thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lou.
Good to have you all with us. Newly released documents show the FBI warned the Obama administration that Russians were bribing their way into a larger share of the U.S., the American nuclear energy industry. Years years before any of that evidence made its way to the public. The Bureau found evidence of kickbacks, of extortion, money laundering, and other crimes ahead of, are you ready for this? Ahead of the 2010 approval of the sale of uranium-1 to Russia's Rosatom. They also had eyewitness accounts of Russians funneling money into, are you ready for this? The Clinton Foundation while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Newly released FBI documents show former Director James Comey started drafting his exoneration of Hillary Clinton months before the investigation was concluded. Now, the heavily redacted emails show an early version of the statement forwarded to Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe on the 2nd of May, long before key interviews in the case were conducted, including with Hillary Clinton herself. Wow. It looks like there is a lot more to the Clinton corruption story, all of it taking place within the years of the Obama administration. Well, turning to a more present development, two members of Fusion GPS, the firm responsible for the shocking, controversial anti-Trump discredited dossier, summoned to speak in front of the House Intelligence Committee tomorrow. Now, this comes after employees refused to comply with House-issued subpoenas, claiming the panel is acting, quote, in bad faith. Are you kidding me? Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge with our report.
Based in Washington, D.C., Fusion GPS describes itself as a strategic intelligence firm. It commissioned the controversial Trump dossier and has a track record of using intimidation and smear tactics, according to congressional testimony, statements for the record, and the first-hand account of London-based Venezuelan journalist Alec Boyd.
They are particularly good at spreading misinformation, disinformation, and smears.
In his first American television interview, Boyd says he was targeted after his 2012 reporting on Derwick Associates, a power company with close ties to the Venezuelan government. The company allegedly skimmed nearly $1 billion from rigged contracts with the late Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez.
My understanding is that they were hired basically to smear Derwick opponents.
British police records show Boyd reported a break-in with 2 laptops stolen from his London home in November 2014.
What was on the computers?
Evidence about corruption and scandals. There's a lot of information about my sources, people that were believed to be collaborating and sending me information from Venezuela were assaulted in Venezuela by the intelligence police of Mr. Chavez.
Did Fusion GPS come after you?
They created fake Twitter accounts with my name. They produced huge amounts of information, fake information about me, accusing me from being a pedophile to being an extortionist, to a drug trafficker, to a car thief.
Boyd says he believes the suspect seen in the security camera video left pictures of his children inside his coat as a warning.
The message was, we know where you are, we know where your children are. About a week after that, 2 sets of envelopes were sent to me from Tbilisi in Georgia, handwritten messages saying, you touched the wrong girl, you pedophile. You think no one can touch yours?
Fusion GPS is led by Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritsch, who left the Wall Street Journal about a decade ago. Boyd says this document shows Fritsch traveled to Venezuela to shut down any investigative reporting into Derwick's actions.
Does Fusion GPS use its credentials as former journalists?
I believe they're basically cashing in the years of experience that they accumulated collectively in different newspapers, in different media around the world.
Do you swear?
Boyd's allegations mirror congressional testimony from Bill Browder, who told senators Fusion GPS used smear tactics to discredit him and his late attorney Sergei Magnitsky, who he says was tortured and murdered 8 years ago in a Russian jail. Moreover, in a congressional declaration, human rights activist Thor Halvorson said Fusion GPS used, quote, scorched earth methods. To date, Simpson has refused to reveal his sources and who paid for the Trump dossier.
I don't believe certain privileges that apply to journalists or to lawyers should apply to Mr. Simpson. because he's neither. He's basically a spin doctor.
Fusion GPS did not respond to multiple requests for comment. A lawyer for Derwick Associates did not address its relationship with Fusion GPS or the Boyd allegations, but said the claims by a human rights activist to Congress are without merit. In Washington, Catherine Herridge, Fox News.
And joining me now, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, now senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. This is a blockbuster.
Yes, Lou.
The fact that the FBI's top officials kept the Russian interference in our economy, attempting to gain access to more uranium in the United States, is just stunning. And the FBI stayed on top of this, shut it down for 4 years, particularly during the reign of Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State.
Right. Well, Lou, look, this goes back to a conversation we had about 2 months ago. The Obama administration should have been treated like a crime scene across the board. Now we're learning the FBI was not only not honest, they took the other side. And two things about this notable. I think the FBI's corruption started under the Bill Clinton administration. They had a 20-year plan. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, to, I think, put their people in place. Lois Lerner being an example where you place your people in, they become part of the permanent bureaucracy. Andrew McCabe became one of those individuals one way or another. The second factor is that they always accuse their opposition of what they're doing. And that's why I think you've seen, Lou, such a vigorous attempt by them to smear President Trump with the Russian issue. It's all there.
Peter Schweizer wrote a book, Clinton Cash, in which he blew the doors off of what is arguably the biggest corruption case in American political history.
No doubt.
And it was pushed aside, denied by top FBI officials, publicly just simply ignoring it, the Obama administration not being held to account. James Comey, the director of the FBI, putting forward a document exonerating Hillary Clinton before he had even conducted
3 months before the interview, correct.
This is a level of corruption that screams for a special counsel for investigations by Congress. And what has everyone done? They're looking to Russia for the collusion that existed from a year after President Obama took office in 2010. This is madness, and the American people are being poorly served by both the national left-wing media and their government.
This should be headline news, this blockbuster. And simply put, Lou, the idea that Ms. Clinton and everybody who was associated with her during this time in office, the real issue, as bad as the server issue was, the Clinton Foundation issue is 5 orders of magnitude worse. This is pay to play. And in this case, Lou, we're talking about, as you mentioned, uranium, strategic materials, which goes to the very heart of our ability to generate nuclear material, nuclear weapons, or suppress others from getting it. And the idea here is that we allowed a political party, certain individuals within a party to corrupt this process.
We didn't. Let's be clear.
Someone did.
No, we know who did.
We know who did.
The FBI did not say a word when the Democratic National Committee refused to allow them access to the servers, which the FBI knew had been hacked by Russians cyber attacking, and then talking about collusion with the Russians. Why did President Obama let that go? Why would you allow the FBI not to intervene?
This circles back to the deep state. Lou, they were so arrogant in their belief that they were going to win. They thought none of this would ever come out. We would never have known this had President Trump not won.
It's without question. And now the question becomes, what is his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, going to do? Because he has a mountain of work in front of him. And you know what is really troubling to me is we had Alan Dershowitz, who was a bright man
I know
and a terrific American. But he said on this broadcast, effectively, that there are 2 sets of laws in this country. One for you and me and the rest of the American people, and another for the people who lead the government. And his point was, Hillary Clinton, in his judgment, should not be prosecuted or investigated because there is a good old boys and girls network that says such things just don't happen in America. And if he's right, the rest of us are wrong, and we're in real greater trouble than any of us ever suspected.
We are in trouble, but they should all be together talking about this at some federal lockup, to include Alan if he really feels that way. So I'm sorry. I'm sure he'd do well with her.
Alan will be a tough fellow to prosecute because he's such a...
He can defend her then. I mean, come on, it's all one big happy family,
no
right?
kidding. Tony Schaefer, good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here, Lou.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, President Trump moments ago urging Congress to deliver on tax cuts for the American people.
So let's give our country the best Christmas present of all. Massive tax relief.
Maximum tax relief. We'll take up the Trump agenda. Matt Slapp joins us here next. Stay with us. What's the difference between philanthropy and political activism? Well, there's none if your name is George Soros. He's stepping up his efforts politically to back every leftist in the country and to work as hard as he can against President Trump and his agenda. The left-wing billionaire transferring $18 billion to his Open Society Foundation. That makes it the second largest foundation in the country, and it's all about politics. Soros lost $1 billion because he bet against Donald Trump, his election, and the markets, and he obviously had little use for conservatives even before that. Joining me now, Matt Slapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union. Matt, good to have you with us. Let's start.
Great to be here, Lou.
Let's start with, we'll get to all of the day's political developments, but it's fascinating to me that George Soros has a foundation dedicated to political activism, left-wing activism, anti-American activism, I believe in many examples, and he gets to do it through a tax-exempt foundation. What are you kidding me?
Yeah, and isn't it amazing that you have these smallish Tea Party groups that get persecuted, prosecuted by the IRS, but I've never heard George Soros even have a nasty letter from the IRS for all this political activity he's running through a C3 foundation.
Yeah, and do you think he should be stopped?
I think that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And why is it in politics that people who have a conservative and free market point of view are always attacked, but people on the left seem to get off scot-free? I would be okay with an audit of the Open Society Foundation. I think it'd be a good thing.
Well, I think that you've come upon a Solomon-like solution here.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, I don't understand why we give tax exemptions to any group involved in politics. It is a strange idea to me, an alien idea, if you will. What do you think?
Well, that's what, you know why, Lou? Because you have a proper interpretation of the law, and that if you get a tax deduction for your contribution, it's because that entity is supposed to be helping a society with some kind of charitable purpose. And unfortunately, electioneering, which is really the term and the line that George Soros crosses constantly, should not qualify for that tax exemption. So what you're actually doing is looking at the law and interpreting it correctly. Now, maybe the government should as well.
Yeah, I think you're right about me being right.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
I just happen to think is your point about the gander and the goose and all of that being good. The fact of the matter is, I think they all should be on a level playing field.
That's right.
And nobody get a tax exemption. What sense does that make? Let's go to the president's tax cut that he's pushing, and with the hospitable Heritage Foundation tonight. He's doing so. It's a bold plan, a bold proposal. Do you believe that Senator McConnell, Speaker Ryan can deliver?
I think that they're running the same play on health care, Lou. I think they've got about 47 or 48 Republicans who are enthusiastic about getting this passed. But it's going to come down to a handful of Republican senators. And I think at the end of the day, what Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and the president, quite frankly, I think what they're going to have to do is realize this is not 1986 and a big tax reform package. This should really be 1981, with dramatic tax cuts so we can keep this 3% growth, this bull market, and allow average Americans to have some economic prosperity and that's where we should be.
It's really, to me, it's just utterly mind-boggling to watch Ryan and McConnell and the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable, the bankers for Ryan and McConnell, act as if there's no correlation between the presidency of Donald Trump and all that we are seeing in increasingly more confident consumers, more confident investors, higher stock market prices, and 3% plus growth. When it is clear he is precisely that force that arrived on the scene on November 8th and has instilled that confidence and laid out a vision for prosperity. I really cannot understand why corporate America is working against itself, why small business isn't demanding more of their government, as well as, of course, the middle class, which has been battered under the policies of the last two presidents.
I think, Lou, it's very important in this tax plan for your viewers to understand, which is there's all these budget rules and all these kind of this jargon we use when we talk about the budget process in D.C., and it's mind-numbing. And the fact is this, average Americans just need a big tax cut, and that's what they need. And when they talk about paying for a tax cut or a revenue-neutral tax cut, what they're really talking about is some people get their taxes raised and some people get their taxes cut. And in the end, it all comes out in a wash. That's not going to stimulate growth in the economy. And I just think the faster we get there as a party and the faster we realize, look, we just got to give the medicine needed to the average American and to the economy, I think the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, the average American. I hate that expression.
I'm sorry. Now, see, I was on a roll with you, and now I've blown it.
It's not just your expression. It is an expression that in the debate we're talking about. They're average Americans. Americans are exceptional, and
they are.
And the reality is government is certainly not exceptional. If I can make that generalization, I'd rather that money be in the hands of those who matter most, and that is our middle class and those who aspire to be part of it. Matt Slapp, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Lou.
Always. Up next, President Trump tonight addressing the NFL insults of our flag, our anthem, our nation.
We believe that our great American flag should be treated with reverence and respect, and that young Americans should be taught to love our country, honor our anthem, and proudly recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
We'll have a report for you on today's meeting with NFL players and owners right after the break. We'll even get to hear from Roger Goodell. I know you can't stand the excitement, but please stay with us through the break. We'll be right back. Well, NFL owners, executives, and players meeting in New York City for 3.5 hours as they watched ratings continue to decline for the game that they are playing, and the decline goes on. Monday Night Football last night suffering the worst ratings of the entire season. It is extraordinary, but against that backdrop, Commissioner Roger Goodell didn't even ask anyone about, well, maybe standing for the anthem, paying attention to the flag, respecting the nation. Didn't even come up, apparently. Fox News senior correspondent Rick Leventhal with the latest.
Lou, this has become a real PR challenge for the NFL and costly for the networks. One analyst says football ratings on CBS on Sundays is down 17% from last season, and player protests are getting much of the blame, with a lot of fans saying they don't want to see their favorite team mixing politics with football, and they view the kneeling and sitting and other demonstrations as disrespectful to the military and the flag. These NFL owner meetings will address the controversy and already are. There was a meeting this morning with a dozen owners, 13 players, and the commissioner focused on the topic, and a joint statement released by the league and the Players Association says today owners and players had a productive meeting on how we can work together to promote positive social change and address inequality in our communities. Darius Butler from the Indianapolis Colts spoke just after that meeting.
Will players will continue to take a knee?
I mean, that's going to come down to the individual. And it's going to be an individual choice. And but I think the ownership and the team and the league is and the players. I think we're all going in the right direction.
The two sides pledged to find common ground during these next couple days of meetings, and perhaps not surprisingly, the meetings themselves drew protests. A couple dozen people in front of the hotel earlier today carrying signs, making speeches, and eventually kneeling outside the front doors saying they were taking a knee against white supremacy. A couple of the demonstrators then got inside and briefly confronted Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, who was one of the few owners to say that he would bench players who failed to stand for the anthem. The NFL says that there may or may not be a resolution here from the meetings. They will make some kind of statement, probably hold a press conference on Wednesday afternoon when the meetings conclude, and they say that the two sides are talking, and that's a good thing. Lou?
Rick Leventhal reporting on the NFL meeting and a commissioner who really didn't want to take up the issues, apparently. Instead, we're hearing about they want social change over the NFL. Who knew that that would be so entertaining and bolster the game so well? They're trying to destroy themselves. We'll see how it works out. We'll keep you up to date day to day as the process goes on. Up next, President Trump isn't giving up on health care.
To restore opportunity and freedom, we must continue our campaign to repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare.
Charlie Hurd is back with me in just moments. We'll take up the Trump agenda and what is likely going to happen next with that NFL social change. We're talking football here, right? We still are talking football, right? Stay with us. We're coming right back. Senator McCain keeping company with the left, the Dems, and taking a shot at the Trump-Bannon brand of, well, economic nationalism.
To refuse the obligations of international leadership and our duty to remain the last best hope of Earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems is as unpatriotic as an attachment to any other tired dogma of the past.
Wow, that was pretty good. It was a liberal organization he was talking to. Did you ever hear him talk about President Obama that way? Even once. The response on the part of the president, I thought, was very restrained. In a radio interview, here he is.
People have to be careful because at some point I fight back.
Yeah.
You know, I'm being very nice. I'm being very, very nice. But at some point I fight back, and it won't be pretty.
Rejoining us now, in point of fact, Washington Times opinion editor, Fox News contributor, Charlie Hurd. Charlie, the exploitation of Senator McCain is extraordinary. I mean, that's exactly what the left is doing here.
Yeah, it is truly extraordinary, and I love the fact that he suggests somehow that this is a guy who's been in Congress for like 400 years, I think. I think he was at the founding, possibly. Although I'm sure he would have voted against the Constitution if he had been part of the founding. But for him to claim that these people are not about solving problems, what problems have you solved, John McCain? You haven't solved any problems. All the things that you have brought us. Take McCain-Feingold, for example. What was that all about? The entire McCain-Feingold bill was designed to do one thing. It was designed to erase his involvement in the Keating Five. This guy has been a disaster from the beginning. He is a failure. He is a failed presidential candidate. And I'm, quite frankly, sick and tired of listening to him talk about anything, let alone venting his spleen all over Donald Trump, because Donald Trump accomplished things that John McCain never could have accomplished.
I think I think you've said it absolutely correctly. I mean, you did leave out one other fine piece of legislation that he was moving forward, and that was the Kennedy-McCain legislation on comprehensive immigration reform. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, and you know, I feel like here, assuming this is nearing the end of the guy's career, I think it's kind of interesting that what the end will be remembered for is the fact that he flew back into town to thwart not one but two key significant things that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. And you know, he's been doing that his entire life. That when the press calls him, you know, frothing and salivating all over him, they call him a renegade. What they actually mean is he's a Democrat, and that's why they've always loved him, because he's a Democrat and he loves to crap all over Republicans, and they can always rely on him to do that, and he does it. And look at what you've got as a result. You have the mess that we're in.
Yeah. The Maverick. The Maverick, by the way, and his sidekick, Lindsey Graham, the favorites amongst the so-called Republican Party, on the Sunday talk shows still after all this time. I wonder why they're so highly favored and prized by the Sunday talk show hosts. We'll have to explore that further and see if we can divine the reason. Charlie Hurd, thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Lou.
Up next, President Trump today pushing his America First tax plan.
Our tax plan will ensure that companies stay in America, grow in America, and hire in America.
Byron York in the room for the president's speech. What did he make of it all? He joins me here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You know, you got to love the Senate. They're a Democrat and Republican senator, in that case, Patty Murray, and Lamar Alexander can come together and create a bipartisan deal to rescue Obamacare. Why rescue Obamacare, you ask? I don't know the answer to it, but two senators, those two, Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray, would restore insurance subsidies for Obamacare in exchange for giving states flexibility on insurance plans. The president says it's a good short-term fix.
That's a very good solution. We think it's going to not only save money, but give people much better health care with a very, very much smaller premium spike.
But others are calling it a bailout. And joining us now, chief political correspondent with the Washington Examiner, Fox Business contributor, Byron York. Byron, it's been too long. Was there a lot of excitement in the room tonight?
Well, people were glad to see the president at the Heritage Foundation meeting a few blocks from here in Washington, and it's exactly the kind of selling that the president needs to be doing now with this whole tax plan. He didn't offer any more new details or anything like that, but went through the tax plan. These are donors to the Heritage Foundation from all around the country, so they're going to go back back to their homes, having seen the president. So it's one of these essential steps in selling this that the president didn't really do with Obamacare, but he is doing with the tax plan.
But he has resurrected Obamacare with his support of the Lamar Alexander, Patty Murray deal. I mean, have you ever seen the like of this stuff? I mean, it's like somebody needs to drive a stake through the heart of Obamacare. Well, it keeps coming back no matter what you do to it.
Let me offer a little bit of caution about the president's so-called support of this. At the speech tonight, he said he commended Murray and Alexander for doing this. Didn't really say that he was totally on board with this. I would not be surprised if the president and the White House began to say that they approve of a process by which Congress tries to find a solution, but not actually sign on to what Murray
You've been working
and
in
Alexander
that town too
are
long.
doing.
I mean, you're starting to make sounds like the
No,
swamp.
he's going to back away from what you want him to back away from.
Well, I'm delighted with that, but it scares me to hear you to use their language. I didn't know you spoke the language quite that.
You got to be bilingual here, Lou. Come on.
That would be one of the many reasons that I have never been swamp certified. And I love the idea that the president wants to do this tax cut. I think putting money in the pockets of the middle class, small business is a grand idea. But you mentioned details. I've never seen such a detail-free proposal emanating from Capitol Hill and the White House as this. I mean, there's just no data. There is no, they call it a framework. I'll be damned if I can find even a frame, and very little work.
You're absolutely right about that. He didn't offer any more tonight. He would say things like, for you business people, you'd be able to expense purchases in the year that you make them, and
which
he
is
said
a grand idea.
Great idea. He says that almost makes me, President Trump, want to get back into business, but nothing more about that. He talks about the brackets for taxes. Now, where does one end and the other begin? That's a pretty darn important thing. All of that stuff has not been discussed previously. But you got to remember here, first thing they got to do in the Senate is get this budget thing done, and it looks like they may be able to do that.
Right.
But if they don't, I mean, they're really stuck. So, one thing after another here.
Yeah, and all of them seemingly preceded by limitless hypotheticals as to what could happen, when what we need is some good old-fashioned vote counting in the Senate. We'll see how that goes. Byron, as always, thanks for being with us, and it's
Thank
great to
you,
see
Lou.
Thanks so much. Up next, Mitch McConnell failed President Trump on health care. Will he do it again? And now it's a question whether he has the votes for the budget, which will set the tone for the tax cuts, which would set, you got it. We'll take it up with Nick Adams. Deirdre Bolton join me right after the break. Stay with us. In our online poll last night, we asked you, do you believe the best way for Mitch McConnell to make Republicans winners in the midterms is for him to resign? 91% of you respond in the affirmative. Joining me now, conservative commentator Nick Adams, author of the new book, The Case Against the Establishment. That must be a very big book. It hit bookstores today. Congratulations. And also joining us, Fox Business's very own Deirdre Bolton. Great to have you.
Very own. Thank you, sir.
Oh, no. Good to see you both. Let's start with the tax plan, because that's the most exciting thing, I think, happening right now in Washington, D.C. We don't know much about it.
No.
We have a lot of strong opinions about it. And
right. I like what you said, Lou. If it's a framework, show me the frame. Remarkably little detail. But yet the president is speaking about it a lot. He wants to get this done. He wants people to be excited about it. And I know, there's some trouble in the Senate. There's even senator from Wisconsin coming up with his own plan, beginning to reach out to his colleagues saying, hey, if the one that we don't quite know about doesn't work, here's a plan B. So there is, and I know the president did say everybody's on the same page, and there was kind of this unity, kumbaya.
Yeah, don't tell that to Rand Paul.
With McConnell, right? But I do think having somebody there with a plan B who is lobbying for his plan B, it's a bit difficult at the moment.
I think the tax cut's a grand idea. That said, I would love to see it, particularly for middle-class families and middle-class workers and those who aspire to the middle class, and small business people. I love the idea. What I really love, though, was Rand Paul today saying of Lindsey Graham, he wouldn't know a conservative if he met one. I mean, Rand Paul he's playing a lot of golf with the president.
I was just going to say that.
And
that was fresh off the golf course.
I think it's starting to rub off on him. I mean, he's getting pretty direct with the language. I love it.
Well, look, Lou, let's hope that they can get something done. I mean, the president has laid out the framework. We'd love to see some more details, but this was vintage President Trump today. Came out, made the emotional case, made it very clear that we need tax relief. It was going to be a Christmas gift, if I remember correctly. It would be wonderful if
and we can say Christmas.
And we can say
I love
Merry
the way he
Christmas.
said, you want me to say it? He's teasing the audience.
Do it with the
as he's
hands,
selling
Lou.
tax reform, and says, I'll say it. Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. And anyway, he was having great fun with
but he did make a comment about the S-corps, right? The small businesses,
Sure.
the 25% cap. So that's a detail. And then there's the detail, of course, that we've all heard about bringing the corporate tax rate down from 35% to about 20%. So those are the two details I heard. I think what we don't know is about middle America. Who is he defining, or who is the administration defining as middle America? What salary level? We just need to know.
It's sort of a strange point that we're at right now in this discussion about the plan to cut taxes. We've got a number for corporate America. We've got a pass-through number for small business. I think it should be, frankly, a lower rate for small business as well. But we don't have a number for the middle class. We don't have incentives for, this $3 trillion in capital that needs to be repatriated.
And the how. Also, I don't know that these companies, rightly or wrongly, are going to be, oh yeah, like here's the $1 trillion that I owe you, right?
Yeah, right. Or I'm going to invest based on what? There's no question. Lower taxes on that repatriated capital will make them accept their own money. But it doesn't in any way incentivize them to invest in particular in the home economy. And that's the big question mark that looms over
Although the hope
that.
is the jobs, right? The hope is, okay, let's just say your average.
Hope. We're talking money here. This is going to be, cut and dried.
It does. It has to be
incentivized.
If there's one thing, though, that we know about the president, Lou, it's going to be, I think, that it's middle America that he's really going to want to have an impact on. They're the people that sent him to the White House. They're the people that he wants to look after. Wish the establishment would get out of the way.
Yeah, the establishment won't get out of the way because they all know this, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, whether it's McConnell or Pelosi. What this president is doing is shaking the foundations. He's not only draining the swamp, but he is shaking the foundations of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
He is proving to be the greatest champion of the working man and woman in this country, of the middle class. And he's talking about prosperity for all Americans. Small business. And frankly, my guess is he could care less about what corporate America thinks of him because they've been after him from day one. He is scaring them to death, and what they're hating on most is the man they fear the most, and that's Donald Trump.
Well, he's not controllable, right? And
well, not controllable. He's trying to,
he's a leader.
He's a leader. He set a vision, and it's for the American people. It's not just for 134 U.S. multinationals represented by the Business Roundtable and Jamie Dimon, who's gone completely what? I don't know.
Especially if you ask about Bitcoin.
I mean, he isn't going to talk about Bitcoin. Then he says you're stupid if you get involved.
And let's not forget Senator John McCain today with that appalling attack.
Yeah, it was appalling.
Appalling. Amen, Lou Dobbs.
I just don't understand why he, whatever else you may think of John McCain, allow himself to be exploited by the left in this country and the Democratic Party at this stage of his life and career is, to me, it's just very sad.
Very poor.
Very sad. Nick, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Deirdre, great to see you here.
Lovely to be here. Thank
and
you.
we are so pleased that Deirdre Bolton is Fox Business's very own. And that's it for us tonight. We thank you for being with us. Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell and Pastor Robert Jeffress among our guests here tomorrow night. We hope you will be joining us as well. Thanks for being with us tonight. Good night from New York.